Well, welcome back, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow truth seekers. Max here again, talking to you today. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. Today we jump into chapter 4.4, the Bolshevik Revolution and the rise of communism. This is a very important chapter for us to tie together the knots, so to speak. And it's very important for us to go through this before we start talking about World War II and all of what that entails. As usual, housekeeping. This is the Amazon page where you can find the book. This is the YouTube channel, still up and running, although they have blocked one of the shows. So please be aware of that there is different links available to go look for it. Brighteon channel, still up and running, doing very well. Thank you very much, everybody. Please do like my videos, guys. I really need your support to push the videos along and spread it to more people. Said all that rubbish. Moving on. While the Allied forces were busy in Europe, killing as many Germans as possible, another Zionist plot was being prepared in Mother Russia. The Khazarian Mafia had promised to take their revenge on the Russians since 1000 BC, when they were exiled from their homeland. Revenge is sweet, and it takes time. I did mention before that the Khazarian Mafia plans in generations and centuries, very slowly and methodically. They never lose. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, financed and inspired by the Khazarian Mafia at the time. During his lifetime, he probably never imagined what an impact he would ultimately have on world affairs moving forward. Communism is a Zionist fabrication for control. It's a political tool, well written and used in times of turmoil and unrest. It is always presented as the solution for the problem, and it fails every single time. Why? Well, because humans are not able to function in such a system. It's a mindless utopia that is not compatible with the basic instinct of humans, which is self-preservation and greed. The system itself always collapses under its own weight due to corruption and abuse. The only country I know of that has managed communism and survived is China. They had the forethought to tweak the system by inserting capitalism into the equation. And now it works. China is the largest social experiment ever devised. It is truly a wonder to behold. Sure, it's corrupt and as evil as it gets, but it is highly efficient and has propelled China into the 21st century as a superpower. Is it communist, though? Not really. I've spent over 20 years traveling to China. I have personally seen its remarkable transformation. And I can assure you that the amount of wealth in that country is absolutely staggering. So is the level of corruption. That is what communism does ultimately. Back to Russia. Wall Street had already been successfully occupied and conquered. The Federal Reserve was under control and the money printers were spinning like never before to support the war efforts in Europe. The next goal from the elite was to finish off Christian Russia and from there launch an invasion of the rest of Europe. A group of Jays in America, including Jacob Schiff, Felix Warburg, Mortimer Schiff, and Isaac Zielman and Otto Kahn, already planned the overthrow of the Russian Tsar in 1916. They had decided that Russia should be destroyed and communist slave regime would be implemented. Communism was a totalitarian ideology, and it suited them very well for what they ultimately had in mind. Communism was invented by Jays, financed by Jays, and was manifested on the ground by Bolsheviks, such as the people on your screen here, Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, Lazar Kaganovich, and Genrikh Yagoda. These are the people responsible for the Soviet Union. Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra, 4 daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, and the son, successor to the throne, Alexei, were devout Orthodox Christians. They were the embodiment of traditional Christian family, and they led the country according to those values. The royal family was beloved and cherished. Nicholas had witnessed as a child the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881 by the J terrorist Vera Figner, leader of a terrorist group called the People's Will. In 1905, there was a failed communist revolution, Khazaria Mafia sponsored, obviously, and Nicholas was lenient towards the revolutionaries. No executions were demanded. This would come back and haunt him and the family later. During the years that followed, J influence grew stronger in Russia, and the Bolsheviks forced the Tsar to abdicate in 1917. The Jew, Alexander Kerensky, was given $1 million from the Wall Street banker Jacob Schiff to immediately free all political prisoners and lift the ban on political exiles to permit them to return to Russia. Revolutionaries took seats in public offices, and persecutions of Orthodox Russians began in earnest. Many were hunted down and murdered. Jacob Schiff was chairman of the Kuhn-Loeb Bank and assistant of the Rothschilds. He took care of all the contacts between the revolutionary movement in Russia and the J Masonic order, B'nai B'rith. On 27th of March 1917, Jacob Schiff and Max Warburg sent Levi Davinovich Bronstein, better known as Trotsky, and his group of J communists off to Russia to lead a J revolution with no less than $20 million in gold. Some 90,000 Js and Freemasons returned from all over the world to infiltrate Russia at the time. Most of them changed their J names to better blend into the society. Lenin, Marlow, Radek, and Kamenev returned from Switzerland. Stalin, Sverdlov, and Zioniev returned from Serbia. All these players were, when in position, ordered directly from Jacob Schiff to eliminate the entire Tsar family. All of these events happened very quickly once the financing was in place. The royal family was placed under arrest for over a year and then executed in the most brutal way possible. The description of this event, as it has been proven true, is in the video that I will play for you now by the great Greg Reese. And I will see you on the other side.
Started in the 1400s, the Russian monarchy was based on the second letter to Thessalonians, where Paul speaks of a restrainer who holds back evil. As long as there was a Christian czar on earth, the dark powers of the Antichrist would not come to power. Symphonia is the orthodox relationship between the church and the state, where the state protects the church and the church protects the state from falling into sin and heresy. In 1916, after the Russian Civil War, known as the Time of Troubles, the Russians elected Michael Romanov, 16 years of age, as Tsar of Russia, and the Romanov family ruled from 1613 until 1917. During this period, Russia prospered. They became more focused on Christianity and promoted it worldwide through missionary work. While Christianity was the main religion, there were Jews, Muslims, and pagans who were free to practice their own religion. The only religion that was made illegal was the Talmudic worshiping Jews, because the Talmudic traditions were seen as anti-Christian and in complete opposition of their spiritual goals. These anti-Christian philosophies infiltrated the country when Freemasonry migrated to Russia in the mid-1700s. The Freemasons taught that the traditional Christian values upheld by the dynasty were outdated and were keeping Russia from competing with the West. liberal ideas were introduced, such as misogyny, because women weren't allowed to be Freemasons, which became so popular that if you were a noble person, you had to be a Freemason. And Freemasonry taught that all religions can be one, and therefore the Russian Orthodox Symphonia must be abolished. The Tsar stood strongly against this, and so the idea of revolution was introduced. During the industrialization of the 1800s, factories became home to Masonic revolutionary ideas, and in 1917, the revolution began, and the royal family was taken prisoner. The family was taken from their home to a stone house several miles away on the highest point of the Ural Mountains, called Ascension Hill, and murdered. According to the official narrative, they were executed by a firing squad in the basement, but according to the evidence, they were murdered in a very dark, ritual manner. According to the investigation of the Orthodox Church, the murderers themselves, and the material evidence, this is what happened on the night of July 17th, 1918. The stone house was known by the Bolsheviks to be a place where evil acts have taken place in the past. It was prepared ahead of time, and the murder involved 11 assassins and 11 victims: the Tsar, his wife, the 4 daughters, the son, and 4 servants. The number 11 is believed to be based on the 11 apostles who remained after Judas betrayed Christ. These 11 people were taken into the basement. They were shot in the knees, and they were stabbed with bayonets. And during all of this, their mouths were gagged to quiet their screams. In their memoirs, the murderers wrote it was so bad that they were vomiting. The bodies were then wrapped up in white linen, placed into the back of a truck, and kept alive as they were driven to a swampy area outside of the city. They were finally murdered by being hung upside down to drain their blood. They were beheaded, their teeth removed, and their bodies chopped into pieces. The body parts were partially dissolved in acid and then burned. Eggs were boiled, sprinkled with ash from the burnt linens which were soaked in royal blood, and consumed at the crime scene. The Tsar's head was placed into a jar, preserved in alcohol, and shipped to Moscow. In the 1920s, the Romanov family diaries were released by the Bolsheviks. They showed the Tsar to be an honorable man, highly intelligent, involving political affairs, and a devout Christian. As if part of the ritual, this brought shame to the Russian people who were turned against the Tsar through Marxist propaganda. The Federal Reserve System, the Rothschilds, and the British Round Table opposed the Tsar and the traditional Christian policies that stood in the way of their plans for world domination. And many Russians see the murder of Tsar Nicholas II as a necessary precursor to the New World Order, which began proliferating after his death. Tsar Nicholas II is now a saint in the Russian Orthodox Church, and millions of Russian Orthodox Christians believe they need to repent for allowing the dynasty to be destroyed. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
So that's a cute little description of events, don't you think? And everything that Greg Reese says in this video is absolutely true, documented fact. So the assassination sent shockwaves all over Europe at the time, as was expected. A great time of turmoil followed, where military still loyal to the Tsar would engage in battle against the Bolsheviks. Here is a quote by the American ambassador to Russia at the time. I read, "The Bolsheviks' leaders here in Russia, most of whom are Jews, and 90% of whom are returned exiles, care little for Russia or any other country, but are internationalists, and they are trying to start a worldwide social revolution." David R. Francis, U.S. Ambassador to Russia, January 1918. None of the actors were in fact real Russians. They were all foreign actors. It was indeed an invasion of foreign actors, nothing more. They were so proud of their accomplishments that they openly boasted about it. As you can see here, on April 4th, 1919, the Jewish Chronicle, there is much in the fact of Bolshevism itself, in the fact that so many Jews are Bolshevists, in the fact that the ideas of Bolshevism at many points, are consonant with the finest ideals of Judaism. Unbelievable. Of the 22 ministers in the first Soviet government, 17 of them were Jays. The few that were not Jays often were Freemasons, had Jay wives, and spoke Yiddish. We don't know for sure if Stalin was a Jay or not, but we do know that he spoke Yiddish and had 3 Jewish wives. The first act that passed into law by the new Soviet legislature was the Anti-Semitic Act in 1917. That's the first thing they did. Anti-Semitism was considered a capital crime, and anti-communism was regarded as anti-Semitism. Same thing, basically. This is where these words were born, followed by racist, fake news, hate speech, or anti-Semitic, words that are particularly prevalent in society today. Do we notice a pattern here by any chance? Because I sure do. Communism at its best. Why change it when the brainwashing works so well? So let's listen to this fine gentleman explain it much better than I ever would.
Anti-Semitism is used as a great blockade. When somebody's called an anti-Semite, it's usually because they've asked some question or made some comment about Jewish behavior in some way, shape, or form. And because Jews don't want to discuss that behavior, they call you an anti-Semite for daring to question that Jews do anything bad ever. That's really why it is used. Anytime you say something about Jews, Zionists, Israel, anything with a tangent to Jews that is in a negative light, you're going to be called an anti-Semite by the Jews, because this is the defense mechanism that they use to cover up their crimes and to prevent analysis of the criminal action that has happened, which so very often leads to a Jewish perpetrator. The Jewish philosophy is, how did Franz Seiler describe it the other day? It is an excuse to commit crimes. That's all it is. You put all your morals aside and you can do anything. That's the Jewish philosophy. And of course the other part of it, for the people who actually are Jewish, in following the dictates of the Talmud, believe that they are better than everybody else, and they act accordingly. And we see the horror in the world that is generated by that insanity.
Now, those are great words. The man on the screen is absolutely correct. But let me emphasize one very, very important point here, especially for you new listeners. The Khazarian Mafia are not Jews. Okay, they are not Jewish in any way, shape, or form. If you've been following my writings and my talks from the beginning, you know very well that the Khazars back in the day were forced to choose a religion, or the Russians would exterminate them because they were satanic in nature. And what the Khazars did was choosing Judaism and then completely perverted it. They eliminated the Torah and they put their satanic practices into the Talmud, which is the book that they follow. And the Talmud is the most disgusting publication known to man. So anytime in all these chapters, in all my talks, when Jews are mentioned, I'm not talking about Jews. I'm talking about the Khazarian Mafia that are using Judaism as a shield and a cover for their crimes. There are plenty of incredibly beautiful Jewish people around on the planet, and I feel so bad for them because they are being blamed for everything that these Satanists are doing. Okay, so let me make that perfectly clear, okay, for everybody, so we don't have any misunderstandings here. Nothing wrong with Judaism, but Talmudic Judaism is satanic in nature, and that is the Khazarian mafia we speak of in this book. Okay? So, that note aside, let's listen to another Nobel laureate scholar, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and what he had to say on the matter back in the day. Remember, this is a Nobel Prize winner, okay? Not an idiot.
You must understand, the leading Bolsheviks who took over Russia were not Russians. They hated Russians. They hated Christians. Driven by ethnic hatred, they tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of human remorse. The October Revolution was not what you call in America the Russian Revolution. It was an invasion and conquest over the Russian people. More of my countrymen suffered horrific crimes at the blood-stained hands than any people or nation ever suffered in the entirety of human history. It cannot be understated. Bolshevism was the greatest human slaughter of all time. The fact that most of the world is ignorant of this reality is proof that the global media itself is in the hands of the perpetrators. We cannot state that all Jews are Bolsheviks, but without Jews, there would be no Bolshevism. For a Jew, nothing is more insulting than the truth. The blood-mad Jewish terrorists murdered 66 million in Russia from 1918 to 1957. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Nobel Prize-winning novelist, historian, and victim of Jewish Bolshevism.
So, dear listener, I hope at this point, after describing the Zionist protocols, the creation of World War I, the Russian bloodbath, and the economic system creation, I apologize for the dog, guys. It's also clear who is behind all these historic events that has shaped our entire existence. And there's more in the next chapter, the final act, so to speak. I always wondered as a child in school, history was always my favorite subject, by the way, how come the Soviets aligned with the West Alliance against Hitler and the Nazis? Sure, Nazis are bad, but so are the Soviets. Communism was to be exterminated and was the greatest enemy of the West, right? Right? Now it's clear to me that they are all one and the same, guided and led by the same hidden hand. The Cold War was a farce, a classic distraction on a chessboard. So are all wars that has ever been fought since the Napoleonic Wars. The real enemies are not humans. We just want to live in peace, but we will never be allowed that luxury as long as these Khazarian mafia rulers are in charge. More on this front to come as we move on to the next chapter. World War II, the untold story, the hidden part of Hitler's legacy. Now this is when everything comes together. World War II starts, and you will really start to see the full picture of how history has been manipulated so badly against us, and we don't even have a clue. So that's all from me today. I apologize for the noise, but I am surrounded by cars, motorbikes, and my lovely dog, of course, who can't control herself. That's all from me today. Max out. Peace to you all.